Hello again and welcome to Ask Mark Anything. And this is the opportunity you have to ask me absolutely anything. And believe you me, people have asked me anything at all. One recently, they know who they are. The answer is no. A, because I don't think it's anatomically possible. And B, because I'm not a contortionist. And C, because I don't think I'd enjoy it. So you know who you are, and the answer to that one is no. But as for the questions for June 2024, I will get straight to them and try to answer your questions as comprehensively and concisely as I possibly can. Okay, so the first question is, I'm reading this from Tamar. And Tamar writes, "Hi, I sometimes feel a big change already after one session. With the accept uncertainty hypnosis session, for example, I only had to listen to it once to reach my goal of accepting that I don't know the outcome of our IVF treatment. When looking at the future, I now just see something blurry and unknowable, and am somehow okay with that. While before the hypnosis, I saw detailed scenarios that I replayed in my head over and over. How is it possible that hypnosis can work so fast? Just one session and you're done. Because your instruction is usually to listen to something every day for the first week at least." Okay, Tamar, well, that's a really good question. And sometimes we do find that people respond incredibly quickly and fast. And of course, it's wonderful when that happens. I've certainly one-to-one, we can assume that it's going to be lots of sessions. Sometimes it's just one. You know, it could be someone's comes in clinically depressed and you have one session with them, and it's just not there anymore. Now, that's not necessarily the norm, but some people are rapid responders to hypnosis, and other people take a little bit of time. So it does seem, Tamar, that you are a rapid responder, and that is absolutely wonderful. And good luck as well with the IVF treatment. Okay, the next question is from Peter, and Peter asks, I purchased, indeed, several downloads simultaneously, but each one recommended that I listen repeatedly to it for a week, then as and when. How do I prioritise which to listen to, and does it matter if I mix up listening to them? And that's a good question. I mean, sometimes we have people making multiple purchases on the hypnosis download site, and it can seem a little daunting. I would recommend that you work on the issue that is most important to you. So often the worst first is a good principle. Work on the worst first. So whatever it is that you really want to, that would be the best change for you currently, work on that for a while before, and when you start noticing changes on that, in that sphere, then continue working through the other ones. You can certainly listen to multiple ones all at once, but I think really, because the unconscious mind needs specific goals to work towards, I think too much of multiple listening to lots of different things at the same time, whilst we want to rush everything, it's not necessarily the best way to do it. So I would work individually, or I say individually, maybe one or two or even three downloads at a time. But go for the things that seem to be tangentially connected with the main issue, but work on the main issue first. So always the worst first is what you want to work on. Okay, right. The next question is from David, and David writes, "Hi Mark, I have purchased some very helpful sessions, but I want to make sure I'm targeting the right areas for me to grow out of a current situation. I'm pretty sure I'm experiencing what I have read to be called limerence. I am having constant obsessive thoughts about a woman that I've made friends with on an adult cam-to-cam site. She emails me on the platform and I've fallen in love with her, but it feels much too obsessive to be normal. It happened after my mother passed away last year. I did stop messaging her for 3 months, but she reached out to me again last month and I felt I could deal with just being friends. But I think it's happening again. Can you advise me as to which sessions would be best and in which order? I've found I have found I am enough to be helpful. I am enough is the name of the download. And insecurity in relationships and overcoming jealousy. But I would really value your advice if possible. Well, thanks, David. And it's always difficult when we self-diagnose. It could be something like limerence. Limerence refers to experiencing an intense desire for another person, even if the feelings aren't fully returned. Okay, so this is common, what people could call a sort of crush. But limerence takes it a bit further. So the individual in a state of limerence finds it difficult to focus on anything other than their crush, so to speak, or the object of their love, to the point where they might start neglecting their social life or work and other responsibilities as a consequence. So it becomes very difficult to think about anything else other than the person that you're attached to and focused on. And limerence can exist, even if you understand the faults and the foibles and the downsides of the person that you're focused on. It doesn't seem to matter with limerence. And the feeling is that you're meant to be together, that there's no one else possibly in the world for you, which again can be quite a normal experience. But with limerence, it tends to disrupt regular living, and the person may start to neglect other areas of their life and that sort of thing. So if that sounds like you, David, then it could be that it's limerence that you've been experiencing. Now, the fact that you went for 3 months with no contact is encouraging. You drew a line in the sand, and you decided that it wasn't going to go anywhere, and you had other things to do in life. And then she got back in contact with you. So it's your call whether you decide to break off all contact and block her, or perhaps explaining to her why. That might be a way to go. You certainly need to meet your needs in balance. You said, I think, that it started after your mother had died. Is that right? So, yes, that your mother had passed away, and I'm sorry to hear of your loss there as well. But again, that might be something which would instigate a state of limerence in some people. The feeling that one source of love and affection, and even some sort of emotional dependence, has gone, and the attachment might sort of refocus itself onto someone else. So that may have happened. You need certainly to meet your emotional needs in balance in a wider way. So you really need to focus on meeting your needs for community, for friendship, for a sense of intimacy, which can be met with a good friend, not just sexual intimacy, and all these others, this array of needs that we all share, in balance in your life. So keep up friendships, keep up activities, offline activities, in any sort of pursuits that you do, and really sort of fill your life with all those kinds of things as well. Okay. Now, as far as downloads are concerned, it's great that you found them useful. I am enough useful, and insecurity in relationships, and overcoming jealousy, and it really depends on what level you're experiencing your feelings. If you're feeling particularly jealous, and of course jealousy one is a good one to go for. The insecurity in relationships, well, I guess it's not really a relationship, so maybe something like stop thinking about someone, which is a download that we have, and also get over unrequited love is another one which you might find useful. So I would perhaps try those two, and maybe the stop thinking about someone first, and just focus on that, because that is basically what you want, isn't it? To stop thinking about this woman. And if you feel that it is a case of unrequited love, then perhaps try that one as well. But also perhaps occasionally revisit the other ones that you've got. I'm not trying to sell you downloads, but I just think they might be more germane to this particular case, and see how you get on. But again, you wouldn't necessarily want to be listening to them all at once. So, pick a week to listen to each one every day, and see which one's the most useful, and take it from there. But all the best, and thanks for your question. Okay, we have got Lee, and Lee writes, I found my mother dead in March. It was a complete shock, as she'd been well and I'd only seen her some hours earlier. She meant everything to me and did everything for me, as I've always found life difficult. She was 82. I feel abandoned and utterly lost. I'm 49. I'm an only child. I'm single, and I lost my father previously. His death didn't really affect me, as we weren't close, and it was a gradual loss to Alzheimer's. I'm jobless, and I cannot believe I will never see her again, or that she will never see anything I do again. It's been suggested I might need trauma therapy, and it's also been suggested that I self-soothe, which I don't seem good at. Any thoughts as to what you'd recommend? Well, thank you, Lee. And again, I'm really sorry to hear of your loss for your mother. It's always difficult if we're very dependent, if we meet lots of our needs through one source, be it one job or one person. And, if that job or that person gets taken away, then all our eggs are in one basket as far as meeting our emotional needs were concerned. And then suddenly that basket is no more. So it's a good policy in life, if you like, an emotional regulation policy, to meet your needs in lots of different areas. Okay, it doesn't mean to say that you will love someone as much as you loved your mum, outside of that, but just people you get on with, meeting your needs for meaning, for purpose, for status, for excitement, for friendship, for connection to the community, for intimacy, and all these types of things in lots of different ways. So that the need for intimacy doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. It could be people meet their need for intimacy by having a pet, and all these kinds of things. Now, I'm not glibly saying you should just go and get a pet, but what I am saying is that really think about your emotional needs and how you can meet them in all kinds of ways, not just in one place. And it sounds as if you were pretty sort of dependent on her. And I don't know whether you lived with her, but certainly when someone dies, it can take a while to really accept that we won't see them again, that we won't hear them unless you believe in the afterlife, that we won't hear them and see them in this world. And that can be an awful shock, and you have to get used to doing things or having associations that you previously associated with the person but now without the person. Okay, so I do the recommendation to self-soothe. I mean, it depends. What does that actually mean? I mean, we self-soothe when we meet our emotional needs. Relaxation can be self-soothing. Doing things for ourselves, it can be self-soothing. Taking time to realize that you need to reconfigure your life really, and the way that you see things. It may. I mean, it's an unmitigated loss, absolutely. But it may be the case that there's also an opportunity for you to develop as a human being and to become more independent. That may be something that has to happen now, as tough as that might sound to hear, be to hear. So, but also there's the other element of here as well, which it may be the traumatic element, or undoubtedly, if it's a sudden loss and you weren't expecting it, and you found your mother dead, then it may be that there's some PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder elements to the grieving. And what sometimes happens with people when they lose somebody is that whenever they think of that person, because they were traumatized, they just think about the death. They don't think about the life. Okay, so they might, just what comes to mind is seeing a relative in a hospital bed, or finding them dead in your case, or and if that memory comes back and it's triggered by all kinds of things that remind you of that, and it hurts to recall, obviously, and it feels more recent than 3 months ago, it feels as if it could have been yesterday, then it might be that the amygdala part of your brain, the part that deals with the fight or flight response, is clinging onto that memory, and it hasn't been processed into the neocortex part of the brain, which is more narrative. And you'd naturally expect that will happen in time, but it might be that you need help with trauma. So if you have flashbacks to finding your mother dead, if you have what we call faulty pattern matches, so things that are only vaguely connected with that time, kind of bring it all back again. If it feels more recent than it really was, and if it makes you incredibly upset to recall that, which wouldn't be surprising at all, then there may be that might be a suitable case for treatment for perhaps a rewind technique, which is a wonderful way of comfortably overcoming traumatic memory. Now, something I often say to clients, if they've been traumatized by the way a loved one died, not just the fact that they've died, might be that really, if you think about a wonderful book that you read, after you put that book down, you always have a relationship with that book, and you don't think about the full stop, the way the book ended, because the book's got lots of different chapters, lots of different elements to it, and you can revisit any of those chapters over and over again. And even when somebody's died, you still have a relationship with them in a way, and that's the relationship of all the times that you have with them, what they taught you, the humor that you shared with them, the other characteristics that you may have shared with them. That is still there. It may be in the past. Well, it is in the past, but it's still there for you. You still relate to somebody who is not here anymore. They've still contributed to something within you, and that's worth remembering as well. You've read, just because someone has read a book and they don't have to keep thinking about the full stop, they can revisit, they can pick up that book sometimes. You can think about the person who died, reminisce sometimes, even make little rituals and so forth around that person. And but yes, you may well need trauma treatment. So I would recommend someone who's skilled in the rewind technique specifically, because it's a comfortable technique and it tends to be highly effective. Because when you think about your mother, you don't want to think about how she died or how you found her. You want to think about her life. Because that's the real her. We shouldn't be defined by the way that we die, but by the way that we live. So it's a few ideas there, Lee. But thank you for that question. Right. Okay. I've got a few more questions, not too many. This question is from Martin. Martin asks, is it common for a subject to hear themselves snore during a hypnosis session? I would say that it's not common. Hypnosis comes from the Greek hypnos, or the Greek god of sleep. And sometimes a hypnotist will say, you're going to sleep, sleep and all this sort of thing. But we have to understand what hypnosis is, and the state of sleep that it has most in common with isn't slow wave sleep, but dream sleep, or the rapid eye movement sleep. So when we go to sleep, we have dream fragments, and then for about 90 minutes to 120 minutes, we go into 1, 2, 3, and 4 stages of slow wave sleep. So this is non-dream sleep. Then we go into what they call paradoxical sleep, which is REM sleep or dream sleep. And the reason they call it paradoxical sleep is because your brain waves are very similar to how they are when you're awake. Your blood pressure is similar to how you are when you're awake. Your consciousness is quite similar to how you are when you're awake. Your senses are engaged inwardly, though. So it's a profound hypnotic trance, really, dreaming. And your eyelids are moving rapidly from side to side beneath your lids. What they call rapid eye movement, or REM. Now, the old-fashioned way of getting somebody into hypnosis would be to swing a watch in front of them, so they were artificially producing the REM state. So REM isn't a state exclusive to sleep. It can happen during wakefulness, and when it does, we call it trance or hypnosis. So if somebody falls asleep into slow wave sleep during hypnosis, it may be that they have a sleep debt, and that they might sort of wake themselves up snoring. So if you have a sleep debt, if you're just not getting enough sleep, then any opportunity, your body will try and claw back what's owed to it in sleep. So even sitting down or relaxing or having someone talk to you calmingly or listening to music can send you off into slow wave sleep, which isn't hypnosis. It's not the same as the hypnotic trance. Having said that, it's not impossible that someone could be in hypnosis and snore, but it's unlikely because when you're dreaming at night, you're much more. It's easier for you to wake up from a dream than it is from deep slow wave sleep, and your consciousness is quite similar to how it is when you're awake. And we know that depressed people dream up to 3 times as much as people who aren't depressed and wake up exhausted because they're not really getting the rest from the slow wave sleep. They're missing out on slow wave sleep. So no, it's not common. And if it is happening to you, then it may be that it's just, it's a physical situation. Somebody could be overweight and tends to snore even when they're sort of half awake, in that liminal state of hypnosis. Or it could be that you or this person you're perhaps referring to is going into slow wave sleep, because they just aren't getting enough sleep when they properly need it. Okay, the next question is also from Martin. Martin has been busy asking questions. Would you consider making more sessions utilizing amnesia as a tool? Now, that's an interesting question. And amnesia, meaning, of course, to forget, can be a powerful therapeutic tool, which sounds kind of weird. But we might use it for, sort of different purposes. For example, if someone has an obsession, then they kind of want amnesia for that obsession. Then they sort of, oh yeah, I haven't been thinking about that for ages. That's suddenly remember that they've forgotten to think about something. And sometimes hypnotherapeutically, we can induce a level of amnesia. No, some people have unrealistic expectations of amnesia and think, well, can you make me forget a whole period of my life, or can you make me forget this terrible thing that happened to me? And really, they might be talking about trauma. Now, when you de-traumatize somebody, you don't cause amnesia for the fact that something terrible happened to them. What you do is you help turn that memory into a memory that they know was terrible at the time, but no longer feels terrible to think about. So it's a deconditioned memory, but they still have the learnings and the knowledge that it happened. They don't go around thinking, oh, that never happened to me, which would be kind of scary, if that could be done so easily. But the other reason we use amnesia is because we don't necessarily want people picking over what the therapeutic work that's been done during hypnosis, because it's for the unconscious mind. If you plant seeds in a flower bed, you don't want them to sort of go and sort of dig them up with your hands and sort of analyze them and pick them over. You just need to leave them and let them settle. Now, one way of inducing hypnosis, something that hypnotherapists use naturally, is they might sandwich the hypnosis between a conversation. So, for example, if we're having a hypnosis session, therapy session, we might be talking about you decorating your house, or where you plan to spend your vacation, and I've been there as well, and we could be talking about that. Then we do the therapy session, and then you do the deep hypnosis, then you come out of trance, and then I might pick up with a sandwiching technique, pick up on the conversation that we were having initially when you first came in, about going to Greece or decorating a house, or playing tennis, or whatever the conversation was. And that can be a neat way of inducing amnesia for the hypnotic material that we've been focused on before. And the reason we're doing that is because, as I say, we don't want to unpick and pick apart the work. And the conscious mind can be so analytical that it picks apart something and takes the life out of it. It's like having to explain a joke to somebody, so they can decide cognitively whether it's amusing or not in an objective sense. That's not really what we want to do. But this sandwiching of this amnesic effect happens in everyday life. If you wake up from a dream and you've got plenty of time, then you can often remember the dream. But if your alarm clock's going off and you suddenly realize you're really late for work, you have amnesia for the dream because you're focusing here away from that. But then something else, something later in the day may pattern match, may remind you, oh yeah, I had this dream last night. So you haven't. It's not that it's erased from your mind. It's just that your consciousness is taken up with something else. And we find that with hypnosis as well. Oftentimes, the content of the hypnotic work will come back to somebody when the time is right in their life. So yeah. So that was a very long-winded answer, but so certainly we might use a bit of that in our downloads, and it's part and parcel of a hypnotic technique that hypnotherapists tend to use. Right, and another question from Martin. Martin has been prolific in his questioning. Martin asks, I presume it's the same Martin, what are your thoughts on Derren Brown? And does shock hypnosis have a place in hypnotherapy, even if only to demonstrate the power of hypnosis? Right, so Derren Brown, for those of you who don't know or might not be in the UK, is a famous mentalist, he doesn't call himself a magician, but mentalist, and he uses hypnosis and NLP techniques and so forth. And it's wonderful stuff. I think he's great, and he has sort of dealt with topics such as priming the unconscious mind and the bystander effect and all these types of psychological stuff. So anything that spreads a little bit of psychological knowledge can't be a bad thing. Certainly, yes, does he add mysticism and mystique? He certainly does. But I think he's pretty effective. And he's a good hypnotist. I've never seen one of his live shows, but he does live shows. Now, the second part of the question, shock hypnosis. That's an interesting question. When you hypnotize someone, or when you do a cognitive reframe, then you want it to stick. So you want the attention gates open. Now, when you go into shock, your attention gates are open, if you think about it. If you're expecting one thing and something totally dramatic and different, another, happens to you, then your consciousness is wide open. And in that state, you are extremely open to information coming in. So this is why on the reframing course that we do for therapists, we talk about opening the attention gates. It's not just enough to say, to reframe an idea, oh, had you thought about looking at it like this? You need to powerfully sometimes open the attention gates before, so you're causing a little bit of a shock. So the person naturally goes into trance because shock induces hypnosis basically, and then they're more impressionable or suggestible or better able to learn, would be another way of putting it. So we certainly, now what happens when you go into shock? Well, I was talking about the REM state, rapid eye movement state, which people often assume is only associated with nighttime sleeping and dreaming. But it also happens when the orientation response, something happens, you're in a crash, or someone suddenly yells at you, or something totally crazy happens and unexpected, and you're catapulted into a different state of consciousness, which can be quite dreamlike. And sometimes everything seems to go into slow motion during a road traffic accident or something like that. So your state of consciousness is altered, and it's very much like a hypnotist tipping you back and telling you to sleep, okay, which is also shock hypnosis. Now, what happens in the brain, there's a spike, an electrical spike, which goes up from the bottom of the brain right to the top, and it's called the pons genicular occipital spike, the PGO spike, which fires off when you're in shock, and you go into a state of narrowed focus of attention, and you're wide open for programming, which is why people who are shocked will often be programmed hypnotically with PTSD, and then later on there's a post-hypnotic suggestion from the environment which vaguely reminds them of that trauma, and they hypnotically regress to the original incident. Okay, so it's a pure hypnotic phenomenon really. Now the PGO spike is triggered when we're in shock, when we're tipped backwards, or when something happens and our unconscious mind is programmed directly. But the PGO spike also goes off when you're falling asleep, and also when you begin to dream at night. So we see the connection between the REM state and the state of hypnosis and trance. So we can distinguish trance and hypnosis. Trance will be natural trances, so anger could be a trance state, or a state of reverie when you're relaxed by the fire with a glass of whiskey, and you're just miles away and you're listening to beautiful music, that would be trance. But hypnosis would be, strictly speaking, would be applied by somebody else, and in a situation where you know what's happening and so forth. Now, so the PGO spike goes off when you're shocked, but also when you start to dream. And you might have had the experience of, or being with someone else who's having an experience when someone's drifting off to sleep and they suddenly sort of do that, or they feel like they're falling backwards. And that's your PGO spike going off. So that also goes off if someone's catapulted into a state of shock. So we don't want to terrify clients, but sometimes just using a non sequitur or even humour can be a powerful way of opening the attention gates via sparking off the PGO spike, so the person then becomes more impressionable or suggestible or able to learn on an unconscious level. It's not really about cognitive learning. Okay, so great question, or a couple of questions in one question there. That's quite cunning. And lastly, guess who this question's from? It's from Martin. And Martin asks, this is the final question, do you let clients have some white noise, such as a quiet fan on in the background during in-person sessions, or is this something you disapprove of? That's another good question. White noise is sort of unobtrusive noise, all at the same pitch, which is usually quite sort of background and low. And it's been found to be quite soothing. I think for infants particularly, it can help get them off to sleep and maybe maintain sleep, and perhaps for adults as well. When you ask Martin, do I let clients? I mean, I don't do that, but I've got nothing against that, and it might be more effective if I did do that. I don't know. I've never found it necessary to do that particularly, but it's certainly not something I disapprove of. I don't tend to play music. I mean, I certainly did with a client years back. I tried sort of when people were in trance, playing music to them, and it tended to be of the wind chimey kind of dolphin whale song, variety. And then one client came out of hypnosis and she said, "Oh my God, what a god awful dirge that was," And so after that, I thought, well, we don't really need music. We can do enough with our language, with our words and so forth. But if the client enjoys it and it's useful to them and relaxing, then absolutely, we should use whatever we can to expedite hypnosis and deepen hypnosis and so forth. And if the person likes it, that's great. We certainly give it a go. Okay, well, thank you very much. That's this month's Ask Mark Anything. You can ask me something rude, as I said at the beginning, but I won't necessarily answer that. And thanks for your questions. Really good questions, and keep them coming.